Hi everyone, it's Lucy from My Crazy Craft Life, and I'm here today with the big reveal for the May 2019 Flavor of the Month card kit by Scrapping for Less. This month's theme is Myths and Legends, and there's lots of cute stuff in here to go along with that theme. I'm going to be making the first card, and I'm using collection number 1, which includes Water Patterns paper by Scrapping for Less, Loch Ness Monster stamp from Kindred Stamps, Craft Tags by Doris, Ephemera by Scrapping for Less, and Sequin Mix by Scrapping for Less. So I go through and I find this paper because I actually ended up using sketch number 2, and it had kind of this scalloped edge for one of the parts of it, and I found that paper and I thought it worked out perfectly for the scalloped edge. So I just kind of hand cut that, went along with the pattern, and then just cut out a strip of it. So I was just trying to figure out exactly all of the different types of patterns in here, and there's a lot of patterns in here, and I was having a really hard time picking and choosing and deciding exactly what I wanted for the different patterns and what kind of made the most sense. And so that took me quite a while to pick all the different patterns. And in the beginning I was going to make this a 5.5-inch square card, and so I was kind of making everything along for that. And then I decided in the end to make it an A2 size 4.25 by 5.5 card. Now for the sentiment strip, because I was using white, I didn't want it to kind of get lost in the pattern, so I took a piece of black scrap paper and I just kind of layered that up behind it to just kind of give it that black border to make it stand out. And you'll see I also ended up doing that with the image that I'm stamping there now of Loch Ness, of the Loch Ness Monster, because I wanted to make sure that they didn't get lost in all of the patterns that were going on with the card. Here I just was deciding on the sentiment that I wanted to use, and I used the sentiment, "You're unbelievable," and that's actually from the Scrapping for Less, from the banana split level when you get the additional goodies, and that was from the sentiment stamp by Scrapping for Less. That goodie bag that also included Gnome's Die by Doris. It's a little mushroom, it's very cute. Sentiment stamp, like I said, from Scrapping for Less. Fairy Flower embossing folder by Doris, and then Fine Glitter by Doris. So I'm just going to color this Loch Ness Monster and this one I made a her with her little bows, and I made them all in pinks, and I wasn't sure which one exactly I wanted to do. And then I picked those colors because I wanted it to be kind of in the same color ranges as the papers, and I just thought these colors worked out really well. So after I finish coloring this, I'm going to use my Scan and Cut to actually cut the images out, or all the little bows. I didn't end up coloring that second image there, I just colored the one. And when I did that, I also cut out a black silhouette, so I just kind of put it down in the same position that I had it in, and then on the Scan and Cut, you can actually make it create a border. So I did a couple different sizes, and then I decided on the one that I chose that was 0.04, if somebody wants to do that, to give it kind of that extra edge, because again, I didn't want him or her to get lost in the shuffle with all of the patterns that were going on here. The reason why I ended up changing is I just didn't like the white background of the card. I liked that kind of electric looking blue. The card stocks that we got this time are all Gina K Designs and Pop Tone, and the colors are Bubblegum Pink, Wisteria, Sweet Corn, and Powder Blue are all from Gina K Designs, and then the Sour Apple and Wild Cherry is from Pop Tone. So those are the papers that we got this time. So here I just started layering up my card with all of the different pattern papers that I had cut. Now those sizes, for the circle it was 2 3/4. The strip that goes horizontal up and down was 1.5 inches by the 5 1/4. I cut that scalloped edge down to 5 1/4. Both of the boxes or rectangles or squares or whatever they are were both 2.5 inches wide, the part that's sticking out, and then I just cut them down to where I needed them to be, so I'm not sure exactly on the size once they were kind of underneath that strip. And then the sentiment strip was a 1/2 inch, and this included the black background by 3 1/8. So those were the sizes on all of the pieces that I ended up using. So I really think that that black makes the sentiment as well as the little Loch Ness Missy there really just stand out. So I decided to put a cute little bow on her neck, and then I'm going to finish it off with some sequins. And then I also get the Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, and I put sparkle all around the sentiment as well as Miss Loch Ness, just to give her a little extra sparkle, because if she's in the water she's going to be shimmery when she comes out. So that is what I did with this one. And at the end of this video, I actually have the shutter card from my sneak peek, the video on here for that. So if you want to find out how to make that, and if you don't want to check out the rest of them, you can skip to the end and check that one out, because I promised a video for that card after the reveal. So there is the first card, and like I said, with that one I used Sketch 2. For the second card, I used Collection number 2, and I used Sketch number 4. And with this you get Pretty Little Rainbows paper by Scrapping for Less, Prancing Pegasus stamp from Sunny Studios, and this is an exclusive one for Scrapping for Less, Rainbow Alphabet stickers by Doris, ribbon by Doris, and then a sequins mix from Scrapping for Less. So I stamped up the Pegasus, the horse, Pegasus, horse with wings, whatever, it's a Pegasus, I don't know why I keep calling it a horse, but I stamped that up, and then I'm going to use some Copics to color that. But first I was kind of flipping through the papers and deciding what I wanted to go with this and kind of how I was going to put this card together. And I just loved those shooting stars, or the lines of stars in the rainbow colors for that background is what I decided to use. Now those are some Fiskars scissors that give you borders, different edges, and so since I needed a scalloped edge for this one as well, I cut some of that rainbow paper with clouds is what this one, Fiskars paper edges. I haven't used these type of scissors, these edging scissors, in I couldn't even tell you how many years, but for I don't have a die or a cutter or what do they call those, stamp things, or the punch outs. I don't have one of those to make a scalloped edge, and so I was thinking like how I was going to make all these scalloped edges, because I am not good at cutting. So I pulled these out, and it ended up working out really well. So those are the colors. I picked the lightest colors I could find in all of the different colors, because I really wanted this mostly just to kind of have touches of color more so than real bright colors, because I kind of wanted it to match the papers, and the papers are pretty pastel. So I picked all of those, and the only thing I colored with the Copics was the tail and the hair. And then I used some gray tones for the hooves, the wings, and right around the mouth, and to give it a little shading around different areas. But otherwise, the only colors I put down was actually on the hair and the tail. Then I used the Skin and Cut to cut that out. So since I already had the background and I already have the stars cut out, I used just some stitch star dies that I had, the largest one being 2 inches and the smallest one being 3/4 of an inch, and then I had one more that was in the center there. For these papers, or for these pieces, that main center piece that I put down after the background was 2.5 inches by 4 inches wide, and then the scalloped edge I just cut just so that it fit underneath the paper. So I thought it would be cool to make a sentiment and using these stickers, because I just think the stickers were really cool because they're kind of like iridescent. And so I decided to make that say you, and then another sentiment from the sentiment stamp by Scrapping for Less was Make My Story Legendary. Now that was actually, I cut it apart because it had other stuff that was with it, and I just wanted it to say Make My Story Legendary. and so I just cut that apart and kind of pieced that together. But I thought that these stickers just went perfect kind of with this whole idea of the myths and the legends and the colors of all the papers in this set, and I just really loved it. So like I said, there I'm cutting out the parts that I need for that sentiment, and I'm just going to stamp that with some VersaFine ink right directly onto the card. I do use the MISTI just in case I needed to restamp it and I didn't get a good impression. But first I used a piece of scrap paper just to kind of make sure that it was lined up correctly, and it wasn't, so I had to move it around a little bit to make sure. Especially since I cut the stamps apart and kind of pieced them together how I want, with what I wanted it to say. So I really wanted to make sure that it lined up correctly there. So I did end up stamping it twice just to make sure that I got a really good impression and that it was really crisp and clear. And then I am just deciding on where I want to put my stars exactly and where I want to put my little Pegasus. And then, of course, I have to get my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, because you can't have a Pegasus, a horse with wings, without having some sparkle on them. And so what I end up using, or putting the sparkle pen on, is just the wings and the hair and the hoofs, because I thought that was appropriate. And then I also end up using some of the sequins that were part of the sequin mix that was part of this collection to kind of finish off this card. And like I said, I really think this one is adorable. I love the U because of the stickers. I just love that iridescent look to it. And then, like I said, all of the just pastel rainbow colors. It's just, I love it. I don't know what else to say other than that. All of the papers in this collection are probably one of my favorites, with the different rainbow colorings on all of the different pattern papers. So that is card number 2. Card number 3 is from collection number 3, and I ended up using sketch number 3. So this is the Fairy Garden set, and this is the same set that I used to make the Shutter card. So you'll see that some of my pieces there are not all together. Now I have a die. They're nesting dies from Sizzix that they're framelets that have kind of a scalloped edge around it already that kind of looked similar to that. And the card itself on the sketch looked like it was just a circle in itself, but I decided I was going to put it onto a regular A2 sized card and just make the rest of it. So I cut the largest circle that I have there, and that circle is about 3 inches, or 4 1/4 inches, I'm sorry, from top to bottom. It almost matches up all the way to each side of the card width-wise. And then for all of the pieces, I was having trouble after obviously I couldn't cut around it because of the scalloped edge there to make it line up, and I was having a lot of trouble figuring out how to make that line up. So what I ended up doing was just taking a circle die that was the same size as the inside of the scalloped circle and just cut around that then, and that worked out perfectly. So I was able to just kind of move it around to wherever they were going to line up on the circle, and then use the piece of circle that I cut out with the die to make sure that it lined up and was in circular form, because don't ask me why, but I could not figure that out, how to do it. And I was doing it the wrong side, and it wasn't lining up, and then it was sloppy anyway, and I was just not happy with any of it. So the pieces here, the largest banner that is going across the card is 3 inches by 1 3/8. The one going up and down horizontal, the largest one, is 3 1/4 inches by 1 1/4 inches, and then the skinnier one is 2 3/4 inches long by about 1/2 inch. And then the ovals are just stitched oval dies, the nesting dies that I have, and those are the 2 1/2 inches long by 2 inches, and then 2 1/4 inches by 1 5/8 inches. were the oval dies. And then I used the flowers that came with this kit, which I absolutely loved. They were beautiful on this card. And then I have pony beads that I had melted down, tons of them that I had melted down quite a while back, and that's what I used kind of for the center of it. I was going to put a sequin in there, but I just wanted something a little bit bigger. And then I used some sequins in the corners of the card there, and then I used May Your Day Sparkle sentiment from the stamp set that came with the collection. And that is the third one. Now this fourth one is really quick. I just love these papers and I could not decide on what I wanted, or I just didn't want to cover them up. I just think they were all so cool. Now those were mushrooms that I had colored from the mushroom die that came with the banana split level, and that I ended up not using. Now you get a piece of moss with this collection. So in collection number 4, you get Know Me Home paper by Scrapping for Less, Gnome Stamp exclusive from Stamping Bella, Moss by Doris, Keys by Doris, and a sequence mix from Scrapping for Less. So since I didn't want to cover up this paper, I decided I wasn't going to. I just cut this out. It's a standard A2 size card, so 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then all I did was cut, they have a wood pattern that was in the paper, and I cut that out to 3 1/4 inches wide, and that's what I was going to use for the sentiment. The sentiment I used was from the sentiment stamp from Scrapping for Less, and it says there's gnome one like you. And then I finished off this card with some Nuvo drops. I have black Nuvo drops, and so I just put a couple Nuvo drops on there, and that is all I did with this card. And like I said, I loved this paper and I did not want to cover it up, so I didn't. So that is the final one from the sketches, and this was collection 4 with sketch number 1. And that is all of the collections and all of the sketches. So after I finish up this, I am going to be starting that shutter card. Now with this, I didn't even pop this sentiment up, which afterwards I kind of thought that maybe I should have, but I didn't, so it is what it is now. But it's actually a nice flat card, and like I said, I think it's really cute with just the paper itself. I mean, you really just don't need anything else, so you can really make some quick cards. One of the pieces that came with the pages that I got of the pattern paper for this one had like cutouts, so you can actually use that as your sentiments and just make some really quick and easy cards that are just super adorable, and they're bright and they're colorful, and I loved them. So the next one is going to be the shutter card that I used for my sneak peek. So with the shutter card, you're going to have to make an opening, and I'm going to give you the dimensions that I actually used for this, but you can use whatever size opening that you want. You're just going to make the curtain or the shutter or whatever it is a little bit larger. I did about 1/4 inch larger than what I did for the opening itself. So I just used a stitch rectangle die, but since it's not inside, it's not stitched around the opening of it. It's going to be an A2 size card, so the opening itself is about 4 1/4 inches by 2 3/4 inches. The curtain is about 3 inches wide, and it's 6 inches long, so it's the whole piece of pattern paper as far as the length, and then the width was about 3 inches. So like I said, it's about 1/4 inch larger than the opening for the card that you're going to use, or for the front panel of the card, I guess, that you're going to use. Now the piece of paper that I used in the back, I just wanted to mark where that was going to go so I could just pop it in there when I was done. And I just took a white piece of cardstock and I used Distress Inks to do the background on that. Now here I am scoring this, and you're going to kind of do mountains and valleys back and forth after you score it, and you're going to score it every 3/8 inch. So what I did on my little score pal there, it has 1/8 inches, so it's 3/8 inches, so it's 3 slots and then you score, and 3 slots and then you score. and that's how I did that. And then you're going to need a hole punch or something to be able to make the holes, and you want them, I couldn't get all of the pieces into it at one time, so I kind of had to do it in increments, but you can then just want to make sure that they pretty much line up. And then you're going to need a ribbon about 15 inches long. That's how long this one was, and I thought it worked out perfectly, but I guess a lot depends on the size that you're going to use. So then after you score that piece, though, you're going to, like I said, hills and valleys, fold it back and forth. And I used a plastic needle that I have for when I crochet, and I just threaded the ribbon through that and then threaded it through the holes, and it made it so much easier than trying to thread each of those holes separately. I just kind of popped it right on through. You're going to go over the top of it and then just kind of make it even. So however you're going to do it, you want to make sure that the ribbon is even. Now I ended up doing it upside down, so if you have a pattern that goes a certain way, you want to make sure that the top where it's crossing over is going is on the top of the pattern paper on how you want it to look. So that's why I had to kind of redo that one. So once you finish that up, you're going to glue that down. I used score tape to score tape it down, some really strong score tape, to make sure that it stays down there. And then, like I said, now I'm going to go back to the panel, and the inside panel is about 4.5 by 3 inches. Now you remember the opening was 4 1/4 by 2 3/4. You want that piece that's going to go underneath kind of the frame or the window to be a little bit bigger so you don't see any of the edges. And then I didn't end up using any masking on this, but since I was using my scan and cut and I was going to be cutting these out, I decided to make some for the next time I want to make something. And I was just kind of playing around if I wanted the blue background, but I decided the green I liked better with how this was all going. So I only used 2 color Distress Oxides. I just used Broken China and Lucky Clover. And then I used the Hillside stencils and the Cloud stencils just to do some distress coloring on there and to give it some dimension. So basically what this is going to be looking like is you looking outside from your inside of like your house out a window, and this is what you're going to see when you're looking out of the window. After I get through with all of that, I also made it a little bit darker, the green mixed in with the blue on the top there that you can see, so I just kind of blended that out a little bit more. That's what's so nice about Distress Oxides, is they blend so easily and you can kind of cover up a lot of your mistakes. So here I just stamped the images that I was going to end up using and coloring. And then these are the colors that I used for coloring the fairies and the little mushrooms. Now I kept these again, I kept them really light because this is kind of pastel. I guess they're kind of bright colors, but they're not bright. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but they're more pastel looking colors, and so I wanted to keep the fairies the same way as well as the mushrooms. So I did the mushrooms in the reds, and then left the little circle-y things white and just put a little gray in there for some shading. And then that was pretty much it. Like, this was not a whole lot of fancy coloring, but I did you know, just give it some shading in different areas. And then I thought it'd be cool for the fairies to have blue hair instead of going with kind of a natural color hair. I just thought that would be fun. So after I put this card together, I realized that you're going to need something to tell you to pull these kind of sideways, because you're not pulling up and you're not pulling one side or the other. You kind of need to pull both. And I have the Lawn Fawn, what is this set called? I think it's called Pull Me, or Push Here. The Lawn Fawn's Push Here set, and so it has some arrows and the push me, pull me's, press me's, shake me's, all that type of stuff. And so I used the Pull Here stamp on the very bottom, and then I used the little arrows that come with it, and I made one go each way so that hopefully when somebody was looking at it, they would realize that you're going to pull the ribbons one in each direction. I showed it to my son, and he had absolutely no idea what to do with it. He just kind of looked at me and was like, is that your card? I was like, well, you don't know what to do with it? And that was before I put the pull here on there. And then after I put the pull here on there, I showed it to my husband, and he kind of looked at it for a second, and then he was like, oh, I gotta pull something? And he was like, I pull the strings, right? I was like, yeah, you pull the strings. So he did that, and then I showed it to my daughter, and she knew what to do right away. So hopefully when somebody looks at it, they will know that they need to pull them sideways, each one. So here, like I said, I had marked off where I was going to put that, so I knew right where it was going to go, and I'm just trying to figure out how I want to place these images inside of the frame or inside of the window, and how much I wanted sticking out and kind of where I wanted what. And so that was a lot of that, just kind of playing around with it. I also ended up using some foam tape behind the frame part or the window part, because I wanted it to kind of have a little dimension, and I wanted it to look like you were kind of looking out of a window. After I did it, I thought it might be kind of cool to put a piece of acetate on there to really give it the effect of a window, and I thought that would be really cool, but I didn't do that. But if you make one, you might want to do that, because like I said, I think that would be a cool idea. So after I decided where everything was, I'm just going to tape everything down in the positions that I want it. And if you have an image that's too large, you may have to end up cutting off, you know, like if I would have put the fairies back a little bit further, they would have needed to have their feet maybe cut off or something if they don't fit in the frame. But as far as this goes, it ended up working out fine, and they fit perfectly inside of my little window. So like I said, there's the foam tape that I'm putting down to raise up that window a little bit and to give it some dimension when you're looking out of it. And then I do end up using my sparkle pen with the fairies, because you certainly cannot have fairies without sparkle. So I do that, and then I just place down the frame, and I kind of did it halfway. I don't remember, somebody I watched do this, and I thought it was a really good idea to kind of half take off your backing to make sure that you get that on there straight. And then, like I said, I used the really strong score tape to put the shutter or the curtain directly onto the frame that you're putting on there. And I stuck it right over the ribbon, so now the ribbon will stay in place. Then you don't have to, you know, worry about that kind of pulling out. And you're just going to place it right over that window, the top of the window, and line it up. And that is the shutter part. And it goes up and down, and then you're going to tie off the ends and just put a knot there at the end, just so it doesn't kind of shoot up at any point in time, which it could. And then you're also going to want to put kind of a valance over it. Now, I was talking about my Fiskars scissors. This is actually what I found these Fiskars scissors for, because I wanted to make the valance have a border on it, and then I completely forgot to do it when I was making the card. So I just cut out a piece of scrap paper that was, you know, from the same pattern, and that piece is about 3 1/4 inches, and then you're going to score it at 1/4 inch and kind of fold that over and score that over, and that's going to be the top. And a lot has to do with how thick your foam tape is. So if you're, because you kind of want to cover the top of the foam tape sticking out there. And like I said, if I would have put a scalloped border on that, I think it would have been really cool, but I don't know, I completely forgot to do it and I kind of thought about it as I was pulling the piece off of foam tape there, and it was like, well, too late now. So I ended up, like I said, you want to do that about 1/4 inch, and you might have to take a little bit off. I did not double up on my foam tape, but you certainly could have, and then, like I said, it would have made the valance really pop out, and if you put a scalloped edge or something on there, it would really make it pop out. So I picked the sentiment for this, May Your Day Sparkle, because I just liked that and I thought it was cute. And then on this, with the sparkle pen, I put it all over the fairies, the hair, their clothes, and their wings, and their shoes. The only thing I didn't put it on was their skin, even though you probably could get away with that too. And so I did put it all over that though. And then I You probably want to put your sentiment in there prior to you putting your entire card together. I always forget to put my sentiments on, and then I'm sitting there at the end saying, oh crap, I hope this turns out okay, otherwise I'm going to have to throw this whole card out. So I would have liked to use like the Misty or something to be able to do that, but since it was so thick with the foam tape and stuff, it just wouldn't have worked. So I did stamp it off. I just wanted to make sure that it was going to stamp decently, and then I just really prayed as I stuck it on there that it was going to work out, and it did. So there is that part of it, and this is where I'm realizing, because I kind of stopped, I went and showed everybody in my house, and then I was like, yeah, I guess I do need something else. And then I got the stamp set out from Lawn Fawn with the pushes here and the pulls and all of that stuff. And I decided, like I said, to put the arrows, one going each way in each direction, and then to put the pull here right in the center, so that when they're looking at it, they hopefully, especially when it's down, they will think to pull the strings. And I think most people will. My son, not so much. My husband, maybe. But like I said, I think it ended up turning out really cute. I really loved how this turned out. I've been wanting to make a shutter card for a while, and I really don't know why I didn't, but it was not too bad. It was pretty easy, actually. So that is it. And there are those scissors because I didn't know I was going to use them in the other video, and I just wanted to make sure everybody realized that you could do that, and it works out really well to use that as a valance, or for your valance, that you could use something like that. So that is it. Those are all my cards with the May 2019 Flavor of the Month card kit. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to grab yours, hopefully there's still some left, and you can jump over to scrappingforless.com and get your card kit. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Have a nice day.